You have walked a path marked by goodbyes you didn't want to say. You have tried, with every fiber of your being, to release a connection, a person, a chapter that feels irrevocably closed by the world's standards. You have gone through the motions of moving on, praying earnestly for peace, shedding tears that soaked your pillow, deliberately filling your days with distractions, and logically convincing your mind that it is time to finally let go. Yet, despite all your efforts, there remains a quiet hum in your spirit, an unseen thread that feels stubbornly attached. This isn't necessarily a sign of weakness or emotional immaturity on your part. It is possible, just possible, that this persistent feeling is a spiritual indicator, a gentle nudge from the divine that God is not yet finished working on. Or through that connection, some ties, some bonds, aren't meant to be severed completely, not when they are rooted deeply in divine purpose and interwoven with the unfolding of God's plan for your life and the life of the other person. When the almighty hand is still actively working between you and someone from your past, He often will not permit you to fully walk away, to simply close the door and forget, without feeling a significant spiritual pull, a compelling sense that something is still unresolved, still in motion. You might find their presence surfacing unexpectedly in your moments of prayer, their name whispered silently in your heart during quiet reflection, or perhaps you experience a surprising flicker of peace, or even a quiet hope when you contemplate the possibility of restoration or a future connection, whatever form that might take. These aren't mere lingering thoughts, random echoes from a fading past. For the believer walking closely with God, these can be profound spiritual signals, suggesting that heaven itself is still actively engaged, working behind the veil of the temporal world, shaping circumstances and hearts in ways you cannot yet perceive. Not every separation signifies a final ending. Sometimes, in God's economy, it simply signifies a pause, a period of preparation, growth, or recalibration before the next chapter unfolds. When your heart refuses to settle, when your spirit feels restless despite your best efforts to find closure, that is precisely the moment to pause, to quiet the clamor of your own desires and fears, and to humbly inquire of the Lord, "Father, are you still doing something here?" Is this lack of peace, this persistent sense of connection, your way of communicating that your work is not yet complete? Let us delve into some of these spiritual indicators, these signs God isn't finished with that connection yet, which might help you discern His hand in your journey. One of the most powerful and undeniable signs is a profound and persistent lack of peace in letting them go. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Colossians, Colossians 3:15, exhorts us to, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful." This peace, the peace of Christ, is not merely the absence of conflict. It is a divine tranquility, a deep inner stillness and assurance that serves as a compass for the believer. It is meant to rule, to arbitrate, to guide our decisions. You have earnestly attempted to move forward. You have added new activities, new friends, new goals to your life, building a wall of distraction around the empty space they left. But no matter how crowded your life becomes, when your thoughts inevitably drift back to them, your spirit remains unsettled. There is no lasting sense of closure, no deep breath of, "is finished." Even when you put on a brave face for the world, proclaiming that you are over it, deep within, something feels undeniably unresolved, untethered. It's as if you are trying to force yourself past emotions and spiritual connections that haven't been fully processed, fully surrendered, or perhaps haven't been as released by God yet. This isn't just an emotional state, It touches upon a deeper spiritual awareness that a thread, a connection, a purpose is still unfinished in God's eyes. This chronic lack of peace isn't always about being emotionally stuck in the past due to personal weakness or unresolved trauma, while those can certainly be factors. When peace is persistently absent despite sincere efforts to align your will with what seems logical or necessary, it is often about God's presence not confirming your decision to walk away entirely. When God is truly ready for you to move on, even if the separation is painful, He provides a supernatural peace that transcends understanding. Philippians 4:7. This peace allows you to grieve the loss, but simultaneously embrace the future He has for you, knowing His hand is leading you forward. But if that peace doesn't come, if the thought of them, or the thought of the finality with them, consistently disrupts your inner calm, it may be His gentle way of keeping the door open, just a crack, a little longer. You may have prayed desperately for the strength to let go, pleaded with God to remove the memories, to help you forget. But if peace still eludes you every time their name surfaces in your mind or heart, that could be a divine pause, a spiritual holding pattern. God might be using that very unsettled feeling to hold your heart in place, preventing you from rushing ahead into a future He hasn't ordained yet. While He continues His mysterious work behind the scenes, shaping circumstances, preparing hearts and aligning His perfect timing, sometimes the absence of God's peace is a louder and clearer answer than a direct yes or no. You may not understand the intricacies of what God is doing. You may not see the full picture. But your inability to rest fully from the thought of them, your spirit's persistent yearning for a different kind of resolution, might be God's gentle, persistent whisper saying, "Not yet, my child, wait." His peace is the divine confirmation of His will, and without it, you are being called, perhaps unexpectedly, to remain still, to exercise patience, and to trust Him further, even when the path ahead is shrouded in mist and uncertainty. Imagine trying to walk through a thick fog without a clear destination or a guide. You would hesitate, slow down, maybe even stop altogether. The lack of peace is like that fog, prompting you to stop moving forward in that particular direction until God provides clarity. A second sign is a distinct and unwavering lack of attraction or connection to anyone else. No matter how earnestly you try to open your heart to new possibilities, Jesus reminds us in Matthew 60:21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." This profound truth speaks to the deep connection between what we value, what we focus on, and where our emotional and spiritual energy resides. You have genuinely attempted to give your heart a fresh start. You have gone on dates, accepted invitations, allowed yourself to be open to meeting new people, perhaps even those who seem wonderful, kind, and suitable by all rational measures. But despite these efforts, nothing feels right. There is no spark, no genuine connection, no sense of alignment or potential future with anyone else. No matter how well someone treats you, how many options appear on your horizon, or how much they seem to embody the qualities you think you want, your heart simply does not engage. Your emotions feel strangely numb or detached around others, and your heart, which might have once opened easily, remains closed, unwilling or unable to attach elsewhere. This internal resistance may not be a flaw in you, nor a sign that you are incapable of loving again. It could very well be God Himself actively preserving your heart, keeping it from attaching elsewhere, because He still has a plan involving the person from your past connection. You might feel confused or even frustrated by this internal state. After all, you have done the work, you have processed emotions, sought healing, decided it was time to move on. Yet, when the door to building a meaningful, deep connection with someone new never truly opens, when every potential relationship feels like walking through sand. It may be because your heart is still, in God's divine economy, assigned or connected to someone God hasn't finished dealing with, shaping, or preparing, perhaps not just for your life, but for His larger purpose. God, in His infinite wisdom and love, knows precisely how to preserve your emotional and spiritual energy, safeguarding your capacity for deep connection for the one He has specific purpose for, even when your mind and external circumstances seem to contradict this possibility. This type of emotional and spiritual loyalty, this inability to genuinely connect with others when you sincerely desire to, is not a weakness. It can be a powerful sign that your heart is being held in place, held captive by divine timing and a future purpose that is not yet visible. When God still has a plan for a person to be significantly part of your life, whether through reconciliation, a restored friendship, or some other form of connection woven into His tapestry, He often actively blocks the formation of other deep emotional or spiritual bonds until the right, divinely appointed moment arrives. Even when you consciously decide you want to start over, to build a new future with someone else, you feel as though you are merely going through the motions, acting a part. There is no genuine passion, no organic spark, no leading from the Holy Spirit confirming this new path. That disconnect, that lack of emotional ignition, is not a reflection of your worth or desirability. It can be a divine redirection, a gentle but firm hand guiding you, by making alternative paths feel unnatural and unappealing. God could be deliberately preserving your emotional energy, your capacity for deep love and connection, for the specific person He is not yet done shaping, refining, or positioning for your life, or for a shared purpose yet to be revealed. Consider the story of Isaac and Rebekah, Genesis 24. God orchestrated circumstances, sent a servant, and guided events specifically to bring the right person into Isaac's life at the right time, preserving him from lesser connections. Your current lack of interest in others might be a modern-day echo of God's protective, purposeful guidance. A third significant indicator is the persistent recurrence of lessons that relate back to the time you shared with that person. The beautiful promise of Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This verse is a cornerstone of faith, reminding us that God is active in our experiences, weaving them together for a good purpose. Lately, you may have noticed a peculiar pattern. Everything God seems to be teaching you, every insight you gain, every sermon you hear, every book you read, every challenge you face, somehow circles back, directly or indirectly, to the time you spent with that person, or to the lessons learned, or not learned, during that relationship. Even experiences that seem entirely unrelated to the past somehow trigger reflections on how things could have been handled better, what you understand now that you were oblivious to then, or how your own character was revealed through that dynamic. This isn't necessarily a sign that you are dwelling in the past or refusing to move on. It is often powerful evidence that God is still actively using that connection, that chapter of your life, as fertile ground for your present and future spiritual growth and development. That kind of consistent spiritual reflection and learning, specifically tied to a past connection, does not happen without divine reason and intention. Every new insight you gain, whether about patience, communication, boundaries, forgiveness, or self-worth, seems tied to a specific moment you once shared, a difficult conversation that left a mark, a misunderstanding that caused pain, or a flaw in your own character that became painfully clear through their presence in your life. This is frequently how God matures our hearts, refines our character, and prepares us for the future, sometimes before doing something entirely new, and sometimes before restoring what was broken or allowing a different kind of connection to form. The very fact that you are still extracting profound, current lessons from that past chapter demonstrates unequivocally that it is still actively shaping your present and preparing your future. God is never wasteful. He doesn't allow significant life experiences to simply fade into irrelevance, especially not ones that involve deep connection and significant growth opportunities. If that relationship were truly and completely over in His eyes, if its purpose were entirely fulfilled, He would likely allow you to move forward without the continuous echo of its lessons. He would shift your focus entirely to new challenges and new growth areas unrelated to that past dynamic. But when He is still using that connection, that person, or the lessons learned through them to mold your understanding of complex divine concepts like love, patience under pressure, radical forgiveness, discernment, or grace, it strongly suggests that your connection, in some form, still serves a purpose in His overarching plan, for you or for them, or perhaps both. These recurring spiritual lessons are not meant to haunt you or keep you shackled to the past. They are meant to refine you, equip you, and grow you into the person God is calling you to be for the future. If God keeps using the raw material of your past to prepare you for what lies ahead, it may be because the story of that connection, or the story God intends to write as after that chapter, is not yet complete. Learning, healing, and character formation are essential parts of God's preparation process, and when you can consistently trace significant spiritual growth, new understanding, or needed wisdom back to a specific person or a shared history, that could be a clear sign from God that His plans involving that connection are not yet finished, and He is using the residual influence to prepare you for their possible future role, or the role of the lessons learned from them. Think of Joseph in Genesis. His prison experience was painful, but the lessons learned in isolation prepared him for the palace. Your prison of a past relationship might be serving a similar preparatory purpose. A fourth sign is a curious and frequent occurrence of bumping into places, people, or things connected to them, seemingly without any effort on your part. Psalm 37:23 beautifully states, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in His way." This verse speaks to the magnificent truth that God is intimately involved in directing the paths of those who follow Him, not randomly, but with deliberate purpose and divine pleasure. You are not seeking out reminders. You are not stalking their social media, driving past their house, or intentionally visiting places you know they frequent. Yet, reminders of them persistently appear in your path. A favorite song you both shared plays unexpectedly on the radio, in a place you've never heard it before. Someone completely out of the blue mentions their name in conversation. You cross paths with mutual acquaintances you haven't seen in years, and the conversation inevitably turns to the past. These patterns, these coincidences, may not be mere accidents of memory or circumstance. They can be the direct result of God subtly but intentionally guiding your steps, aligning your path with reminders for a divine reason. He has a myriad of ways of allowing your surroundings, the people you encounter, and the random occurrences of life to speak messages to your heart and spirit. When your heart is wrestling with uncertainty, seeking answers about a past connection, sometimes the signs are subtle, a quiet thought or feeling. Other times, they are surprisingly direct and external. You might walk into a coffee shop you haven't been to in years, a place you both used to frequent, and instantly feel a sense of their presence, not in an emotional, longing way, but in a distinct spiritual awareness, a feeling that God is somehow still allowing their influence or their file to remain near you for a specific, unfolding reason. These moments become increasingly difficult to dismiss as mere chance when they happen repeatedly, consistently, and without any effort or intention on your part to seek them out. God uses external signs to communicate with us, to guide us, and to keep our hearts aligned with His purposes, even when those purposes are hidden. He can, quite literally, reroute your steps, alter the timing of your arrival, or influence a conversation just to bring a reminder of them across your consciousness. When places, people, and things that are intrinsically linked to your past connection keep finding you, no matter where you go or what you do, God might be gently, or perhaps not so gently, reminding you not to rush the process of finding closure, especially a closure you haven't been divinely called to make yet. These are not random occurrences in the life of a believer whose steps are ordered by the Lord. They are God's way of keeping your heart aware, keeping the possibility present in your spiritual sight, and perhaps reminding you to pray for that person, or to trust the process, or simply to wait. If reminders of them seem to find you effortlessly, persistently, and in unexpected ways, it may very well mean that their role in your life story, or the story God is writing, isn't over, and your steps, even the seemingly random ones, are still being aligned with something deeper, something orchestrated by God Himself, beyond your own plans or intentions for moving on. Think of how God led the Israelites by a pillar of cloud and fire. He still uses visible signs in our lives to direct our awareness. A fifth powerful sign is a persistent, quiet hope for restoration, even when logic and circumstances scream that it is impossible. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This hope, this substance, is not wishful thinking or naive optimism. It is a divinely planted assurance, a conviction that holds onto the unseen reality of God's possibilities. You have made every effort to shut the door on the past. You have intellectually accepted the loss, acknowledged the reasons why it ended, and perhaps even seen insurmountable obstacles to any future connection. Yet, despite these logical conclusions, there remains a quiet, unyielding hope within your spirit, a sense that somehow, someday, things could be restored, redeemed, or brought back together in a way that honors God. This hope doesn't feel like desperation, stemming from loneliness, or a need to fill a void. Instead, it originates from something deeper inside you, a place of faith that still believes in God's power to reconcile, to heal, and to make all things new, even when the evidence before your eyes suggests otherwise. That belief, that quiet conviction, doesn't fade with time, distance, or the accumulation of logical reasons why it couldn't happen. It remains, a steady ember glowing in the soul, even when circumstances seem to definitively proclaim that chapter is closed forever. This isn't necessarily denial. It is often God's way of sustaining your spirit, nurturing your faith, and keeping your heart aligned with His possibilities when the story He is writing is still unfolding, still in progress beyond your current sight. Hope that persists, that endures and even thrives despite the complete lack of logical basis, is a profound spiritual indicator. It is not born of earthly emotion or rational analysis. It lives in the realm of the soul, rooted in the divine promises of God. It may not make sense to your friends, your family, or even yourself from a practical standpoint, but that's because it was likely placed there by God Himself, not conjured by human will or desire. You have done the necessary work of releasing the pain, forgiving the wrongs, and letting go of attachment to a specific outcome. But the hope itself still lingers, and it feels anchored in something deeper, something spiritual that you cannot quite explain or extinguish. When your prayers for this person or situation still include elements of hope for restoration, reconciliation, or a future connection, and these prayers are free from bitterness, manipulation, or a sense of desperate neediness, that is a strong sign that your heart is not hoping out of weakness or fear. It is a form of faith, a willingness to trust in what God could still do, even if it seems impossible from your perspective. God honors the kind of hope that is patient, that waits on His timing, that trusts His sovereignty, rather than trying to force an outcome through human effort or manipulation. You may feel like you are stuck because you haven't completely moved on, but in God's eyes, you might not be stuck at all. You are simply staying still, waiting, trusting, and hoping until you hear clearly from Him, or until His plan unfolds in His perfect timing. If this deep, quiet, unwavering hope refuses to die, even after significant time has passed and distance has grown, it may be because God Himself is keeping that hope alive, sustaining it within you as evidence, the substance of things hoped for, proof that He still has a plan, even one that remains unseen, like Abraham hoping against hope. Romans 4:8. Your persistent hope could be a sign that God is working on something extraordinary. A sixth sign is that your love for them has undergone a transformation. It has matured rather than simply disappearing. 1 Corinthians 13:13 reminds us of the enduring nature of the greatest virtues. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. True agape love, the kind that flows from God, is not a fleeting emotion, it is a steadfast commitment, a benevolent goodwill that seeks the highest good of the other person. You may no longer feel the same intense emotional highs and lows that characterized the relationship in the past. The longing, the dependency, the passionate desires might have subsided or transformed. Yet, the love in your heart for that person hasn't vanished. Instead, it feels as though it has deepened, broadened, and matured into something different, something perhaps more pure and selfless. This isn't about wanting them to fulfill a need in your life or complete you. It is about genuinely desiring their best, their spiritual growth, their happiness, and their well-being, even if that means it happens from a distance, even if it means you are not physically present in their life. That kind of love, refined by separation, silence, spiritual growth, and perhaps even pain, doesn't simply fade away with time, because it has been purified and strengthened in the furnace of difficulty. Love that matures often grows into a form that God can powerfully use for His purposes. Instead of being driven by emotional neediness, attachment, or the intensity of romantic feelings, your love for this person now reflects understanding, grace, compassion, wisdom, and forgiveness. You are no longer blind to their flaws, mistakes, or the ways they might have hurt you. You see the reality of the past clearly, perhaps more clearly than ever before. Yet, despite this clarity, you still hold a genuine desire to see them thrive, to see God work in their life, to see them walking in His light. You don't feel obsessed, consumed, or overly attached in an unhealthy way. There is a sense of peace accompanying this love, a quiet knowing that your benevolent regard for them has simply not left your heart. And that may be because God isn't finished using that specific manifestation of love for His purpose, whether that purpose involves future interaction, or simply the ongoing work of intercessory prayer and spiritual connection. When your love for someone matures in this way, it becomes more selfless, stable, and aligned with God's own character. It is not needy, it is prayerful. It does not seek control or possession. It seeks their spiritual peace and flourishing. God often allows this level of pure, refined love to linger and deepen when He still has a divine intention to connect two hearts, perhaps not in the way they were connected before, but under His direct guidance and for His glory. This mature love is not a haunting reminder of what was lost. It is a preparation for what God might still do. It prepares your heart to see the person through God's eyes, to pray for them effectively, and to be ready if and when God's timing allows for a new form of connection or interaction. When love doesn't disappear, but instead grows into spiritual clarity, grace, and a selfless desire for the other's highest good, it becomes a powerful sign that God may still want to do something with that connection, that relationship, perhaps redeeming it or repurposing it for a higher calling. Mature love, the kind described in 1 Corinthians 13, is often the love that God honors and utilizes when His timing is right for the next step in the story He is writing. And let us revisit the overarching, ever-present indicator, the seventh sign interwoven through all others, a persistent, unshakable spiritual knowing or pull that it's not finished. It's a divine restlessness that defies explanation. Beyond the lack of peace, the inability to connect with others, the recurring lessons, the unexpected reminders, the lingering hope, and the matured love, there is often a deeper, more profound spiritual intuition. It's a quiet but persistent voice in your spirit, a sense lodged deep in your soul that this story, this connection, is simply not over in God's eyes. It's not a feeling born of loneliness or regret, but a spiritual conviction that feels placed there by the Holy Spirit Himself. You might try to rationalize it away, to tell yourself you're being foolish, to dismiss it as residual emotion. But it remains a constant, gentle pressure on your spirit. This unshakable knowing is distinct from emotional attachment. It is a spiritual discernment, a sense that God is still actively working on the situation, on the other person, or on you in relation to them. It feels like a continuous, subtle thread pulling at your spirit, a reminder that God's loom is still weaving, and the pattern involving this person is not yet complete. When your spirit refuses to fully disconnect, when you feel a constant, subtle spiritual tether, even when your conscious mind desires complete separation, this is often God's way of saying, keep this connection in your prayers. Keep your heart open to my future possibilities. I am not done yet. This spiritual pull can manifest as a recurring burden to pray for the person, a sudden thought of them accompanied by a sense of God's presence, or a deep-seated belief that somehow your paths will cross again for God's purposes. It is a call to remain spiritually attentive, to listen for His voice, and to trust that the unresolved feeling is not a mistake or a weakness, but a divine signal that your faith is still required for this particular narrative. It is the spiritual equivalent of feeling the presence of someone in the room before you see them, an unseen reality made known to your spirit. Navigating these signs requires discernment, patience, and a deep reliance on God. It's crucial to distinguish between God's voice and the voice of your own desires, fears, or past hurts. This is where prayer, Bible study, and seeking counsel from mature believers are essential. Are these feelings accompanied by a growing sense of peace, even amidst the uncertainty? Do they draw you closer to God, prompting prayer and deeper faith? Or do they lead to anxiety, obsession, and unhealthy emotional patterns? God's signs, His leadings, always align with His character and His word. They build faith, foster patience, encourage prayer, and ultimately lead to His glory. If these signs resonate with your experience, they are not a guarantee of romantic reconciliation or a return to the past as it was. God's plans are often bigger and more complex than our own desires. They could signify a future of restored friendship, a shared ministry, an opportunity for forgiveness and healing that impacts both lives, or simply God's ongoing work in that person's life that He is calling you to support through prayer. The form of the finished work is known only to God. What these signs do indicate is that the spiritual connection is still active in God's economy. Your journey with this person may not be concluded in the way you or the world might define it. It calls you to a posture of trust, faith, and watchful prayer. It is an invitation to surrender your timeline to God's perfect timing, to release your need for immediate closure, and to rest in the knowledge that His plans are good, even when they are mysterious. It is a reminder that God wastes nothing, especially not deep connections that have been part of our story. If this content has resonated with you, if these signs speak to something you are experiencing in your heart, take a moment to reflect. Which of these signs feels most true for you right now? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience can encourage others in our community of faith. Like this video if it has inspired you or offered a new perspective on your situation. Your likes help spread this message of hope. Comment below to share your thoughts or ask questions. Let's build a community of support and faith as we navigate God's timing together. And subscribe to Pure Inspirational for more content designed to encourage your faith, strengthen your walk with God, and help you discern His voice in your life. Your support enables us to continue creating content that points back to Him. Trust that God is working, even when you cannot see it. He is weaving a beautiful tapestry, and every thread, every connection, every pause has its purpose in His perfect design. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Psalm 27:1-4. Be blessed.